between the
Well, hello there, everybody. How are y'all doing? I'll tell you what, it's a fabulous day in the neighborhood. No doubt about it. It is hump day. And if you're here, then you have fulfilled your destiny, at least for today. So thank you for dropping in, turning on, and tuning in. We are appreciative. I'm excited because I have a good friend and just a brilliant individual. There's no doubt about it. On Mr. Ryder Lee. So before we get into our convo, because folks, this is going to be a good one. I just want to say hello to everyone in the chat room. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Much love to everybody. We speak favor over you. Nothing missing, nothing broken. And if abracadabra is true, then it means that we create what we speak, or we speak what we create either way. So, welcome everyone. So good to see you, Gaia and Grandpa and Nina and Peter and Lady Ellie, everyone. So, y'all know Ryder. And by the way, I've left all of his description for his channel on the different platforms and social media platforms as well. And I saw, Ryder, that you're what? You're less than 300 from hitting 10,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, think about doing it. It'd be a good thing. It would put good karma into your bank account, which, hey, listen, it's always nice to have extra karma in the bank. And I know Ryder would enjoy it as well and appreciate it. So let's see what we can do. So, Ryder, thank you for coming on. I wanted to get you on because the document that I sent you, the Perpetual Black Cube, we went through it here. We wrapped it up on Friday, and the conclusion is that even if we didn't invent AI, AI would still be invented. And no matter how we want to position ourselves and points of view as to what reality is, there seems to be a greater reality than that is being controlled, directed, manipulated, however it is. So, thank you for coming on. Tell us how you've been and how's the new movie going, and what else is happening in your world.
Thanks so much for having me on, Wayne. It's always an honor and a privilege speaking with you. And hello, everyone in the chat. Can't see you guys because I don't have the screen up, but thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And yeah, the document that you sent is really I was kind of shocked by it because when I was reading it, I was like, oh, did this come directly from my brain? Because I've talked about a lot of the things that are in that document, like all sectioned out throughout the 5 years that I've been doing my show. I've mentioned at least a lot of it. And I was like, oh, holy crap, this makes so much sense. And thing that I thought was really interesting about it was talking about the AI in this new digital currency because there's a little just briefly mentioned. I think it said 2026 was when this new digital currency was going to hit.
Yeah.
Well, Elon Musk is talking about auditing Fort Knox, and I don't know if you remember, but Fort Knox was one of the first conspiracies that I ever personally heard, like one of the
Yeah.
very first ones before I ever heard anything about 9/11, before I heard anything about JFK, any of that stuff, was the conspiracy that we have zero gold in Fort Knox and that our money is based off of nothing. Whenever they changed the money from exchangeable in gold to legal tender, it made the money completely worthless because there was nothing backing the money anymore because there's no gold in Fort Knox. That's one of the very first conspiracies I ever heard. So it kind of makes sense in this timeline that going toward that Elon Musk is going to audit Fort Knox. And when he realizes that there's probably no gold left inside of Fort Knox or very little gold, that's going to really upset a lot of people. And then they're going to usher in this digital currency that's going to then take the place of the dollar.
Yeah.
And that was what I was kind of putting, and that was just a little brief little paragraph in that document, but it made a lot of sense to what's happening as we're
A lot
hearing
of
it.
people say 9/11 when Building 7 went down. that was really the single largest gold heist in history. There were several billion metric tons of gold that were down in those tunnels. And to this day, we don't know what happened to that gold, who took possession of it. Yeah, yeah. So I think the Fed now, which is called the digital dollar, when I was a consultant to the Federal Reserve well over a decade and a half ago, um, there were discussions then on the Noro, which is the North American digital dollar. And the plan was then was that you would have to incorporate Canada and Mexico into the equation to make us this quadrant. But no matter what, Elon Musk has fulfilled a role in destiny that I don't think most people are fully grasping. What he is doing is something that's going to live for ages. And it's going to have it's a tsunami effect. And you're right. I don't think that there is gold. Ron Paul, I was for Ron Paul when he was running for president. He has said, I don't think there's any gold in there. And if there is, it's only the ones that are for show.
That's right. And I think when did they change the dollar? Was it the mid 40s they changed it, or like around the late 40s when they
Yeah,
changed the
it
note on the
was.
dollar?
Yeah, it was Roosevelt and his administration. Yeah, he was the one
So,
that put out the dictate that no American could own gold.
mm,
And then when Americans turned in the gold because you were going to go to jail, federal prison, so they collect all this gold, and then 2 years later, he doubles the price arbitrarily on the gold. Anyway,
scheming, they're always scheming,
I
but
mean, the sons of bitches are always doing that, and they got caught now.
and then people are like, he doesn't have the right to do that. He doesn't have the right to find corruption and all this stuff. I'm like, yo, you all are fighting for the wrong team, which is another thing about this document that is brought up within there that I've said several times as well, that the document essentially says that the thing that you're trying to fight for is actually the ultimate like end goal of like what they want to do. And the only way that we get to this utopian type of society, this golden age, is complete surveillance. And what you're actually fighting against is what you're really fighting for. And I've said that so many times on the show, and I think it's kind of just gone over people's heads. But if you listen to Wayne's previous shows, because I think he covered it before, or if you've read the document, you'll understand what I meant by that. That's exactly what I meant by that, and it's explained in that document. And it makes so much sense because that's the only way that you can get total control over the population is if it's a completely surveilled type of state, and every movement is cataloged, everything is digitized, and look at the direction that we've been headed. Everything is now digitized, everything is in these black mirror devices, it's in the phone, it's in the computer, it's now like all data, and AI can analyze all of that data all the time, 24/7. So and and the people that are wanting this utopian type of society, and it mentions it in the document, like, you gotta if you want peace and like all this war stuff, like the thing that you want is actually the thing that you don't want.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
found and I found that so interesting because it's like what I've been trying to explain for a
And the
while
thing
now.
about it is that document brought out that this thing, whether you want to call it AI, whether you want to call it a data collector, whatever it is, I mean, if God exists, then God is a data collector. I mean, that would be the purpose for creating us, is the fact each one of us present a unique set of data. And that's what this thing lives for now. And you think about the dollar. Um, this thing here, when they turn this into this, then that there is no longer any privacy. I mean, you're basically, this is the mark of the digital dollar, if you want to say it is the, the mark of the beast, as the book, as that article was pointing to. You doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Um, you're going to be in it regardless.
Yeah, and another interesting aspect of the document was that they were talking about these cargo cults, and that's exactly like what I was talking about the other day with Juan Ayala on my show. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be interesting if we were essentially the cargo cults way back in the day?
Yeah.
Like, and there was this other civilization that had maybe just slightly better technology like we have today. And the people that live in the Amazon rainforest that have no idea about any of this technology. And we go in there and they're like, holy crap, these people are gods. That's exactly like a cargo cult. So why would it not stand to reason that at some point throughout history that we were the cargo cult and then there was this other civilization that is now us? We've just like essentially switched roles.
Well, look at the belief of Jesus, which was what was it, the Polynesian island where they had John return. That was Jesus. He was the Messiah, the white Messiah. Um, because outside the Bible, there's no proof that there was a Jesus, but yet we believe today, or are taught to believe, that it was an actual person, and yet it's been 2,000 years since that person was supposedly be here. We are, in fact, a cargo cult ourselves.
That's exactly right. And I actually got into an argument with ChatGPT over the name Jesus.
Oh,
And
really?
we were,
How,
yeah,
how'd that turn out?
we were fighting about it, and I was like back and forth, and like it wasn't understanding what I was trying to say because I was like, well, we know that Jesus's name is not Jesus. Vowels weren't invented until like 500 years after the Bible was written, so it had to have been some other type of name, and it did the typical thing, which is Jesus or Yeshua or
Yeah,
that thing like that.
Yeshua or Jesus.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense, Chat GPT, because if names are important and if you don't have the name correct, then you're giving your energy and your prayers and your thoughts to something that you don't even know. That's something that you've created in your own mind. Like, and it essentially said that, well, because people believe it and they've put all of their thoughts and their energy into a name that might not even have been real, it doesn't matter because they've essentially created that name. And I was like, well, that's like my point, that like the whole Jesus Christ name is an egregore. It's an energy source that everyone
Yeah.
has put their thoughts and ideas and energy into, which then creates it in their reality. And how many good intentions and good feelings have we surrounded Jesus Christ name with? That's the reason why his name works in these types of scenarios and these
I
types of
casted
situations.
demons out in that name. I healed people
Exactly.
in the name of Jesus. I used to say a part of my daily vernacular would be, in Jesus' name, get thee behind me, when there would be oppression. Yeah. I mean, and I saw the power of that name. It,
And
it,
that's not me discrediting the name of Jesus. It's just
no,
I think that it's important that we have the names correct, because if you don't have the names correct and you don't know what his actual name was,
who is
then
this
you
egregore named Jesus?
yeah, that's exactly what it is. And
Hmm.
it was essentially like, oh well, the names don't really matter. It's like the intention of the people. And then I was like, well, so then it's like based off of belief then. And it was kind of backed into a corner there where it was kind of like, oh yeah, well, kind of the thing that ChatGPT does is it kind of gives you. Have you ever played around with it? Have you messed around
A
with any
little
kind?
bit in the, I was one of the beta testers they asked to come in, and I would ask it philosophical questions like that. Yeah,
Yeah, it gets caught up a little bit on the philosophical questions, and then
it
it
does.
gets in it. You can catch it up pretty easily, but kind of what it does is it gives like these bullet points, and then at the end of the summary, it kind of wraps everything together, and then makes it to where it can be interpreted in a few different ways, and it kind of coats the entire thing in like a speculatory thing to where it can flip back and forth between whatever it is that you asked
I
it.
know entrepreneurs that are using Gemini, I guess, which is now the next version for Google, but to actually write business plans. And I went, Now, that's going to be weird because you project 10 years into the future. If humans are doing this now, asking AI to write something, right, that is going to be passed off as though it was human thought out, within 10 years, you won't know what a human thought really would be.
You wouldn't, and that's another thing about this document that was so interesting when it came to like these cargo cults, because it kind of gave the impression that we're kind of living in a cargo cult type of thing, and we're duplicating other civilizations that's came and passed uh, us before, and there were little like remnants of that, and we see that like throughout history. We see like the Great Pyramid of Giza. There's pyramids all around, especially I believe the ones in I think it's either China or Japan. I'm
China
not
has, they say,
China.
many of them.
So, but the China ones, it's been reported that they were like crappily made. They weren't like they looked like it that it was the remnants of like a civilization that found what the pyramids looked like, and then they tried to duplicate it and replicate it, but it didn't really work out because they didn't really have the knowledge to actually build it. And that's been my contention with this whole thing as well. Is like, well, if we were all to just somehow die, let's say a big cataclysm came down and it wrecked a lot of the civilization, how many of those people are going to be left over that actually know how to do things? Like, how many of those people are going to be able to know how to build a computer? How many of those
Yeah.
people are going to know how to build a cell phone? Like, I can tell you right now, I don't know how to build a computer. I don't know how to build a cell phone. I don't know how to build a car. I mean, I can do some things to my car that are simple and easy. I can change a tire, change the oil, stuff like that, and put fluids into the car, of course. But anything beyond that, I have absolutely no idea. So, how long until all of the things that we use in our daily lives just start to erode and like completely break down, and then people no longer know how to have them work? And I think a lot of these companies, they put these uh, these sophisticated types of technologies together so that people can't actually figure out how they work. So they essentially have a monopoly on the product.
Firewalls within the firewalls.
Exactly. So if because remember when cell phones used to have like a battery in them that
Hmm.
you can just like
Yeah.
pop off the back, and then you can get to the battery and you can do like inner workings of like you could repair the cell phone.
Yep.
And even that with like computers, it used to be really easily accessible. You could just take off the back of the computer and then mess around with the inner hardware of the computer. You really can't do that anymore. You
They s-
can't, there's no battery. Like you have to get a little screwdriver. You have to take this big plate off. You have to be careful not to damage anything because then that'll void your warranty for the phone. So it's like this very technological thing that gives these companies and these organizations a monopoly over the product because normal everyday people have no idea how they work. So therefore they cannot repair them or fix them. Remember how many
and
VCR repair shops there were like back in the day, or TV
there are a
repair shops
lot,
there was
man.
back in the day? There's essentially none.
I
No
still
one
got mine. I still
fixes
have a
things
VCR
anymore.
machine. It's in my closet. And to answer I mean, not to actually to add to your point there, if this cataclysm, and I do believe it's going to happen, it's happened before, and apparently it's going to happen again. We seem to be on the precipice, but I read a study that said within 3 months, our knowledge of technology will be gone because the one thing, survival. You won't have time to think about technology. You're going to be looking to feed yourself if you have a family or a clan, and then that just breaks down everything because now we revert back to hunter-gatherers, and we don't need technology.
Yeah, it's kind of worthless in that way. Like, I really feel like that if something were to happen like that, people would just abandon they would just throw out
No,
all their technology because it would be useless because no one knows how to fix it or duplicate it or create it or make it. It's only these big people and these big corporations and like these tech giants, which is a very few amount of us. I've never ran into anybody in my life, which I'm not really in that space, but I've never ran into anyone that makes phones. Like, I don't know anybody that personally that I could call up on the phone and be like, hey, and and that's another thing with the compartmentalization of these products as well. See, there's not just one person that's making all of the components of a phone. There's not just one person that's making all of the components of a computer. It's compartmentalized. Some people are working on the hardware and the external visual aspect of the device. Other people are working on the internal part of it. They're working on the processor. They're working on the motherboard, and it's all
Well, I
compartmentalized. And
when
then
I
someone puts it all
invented
together.
the first mobile payment system, that was back in 2009. There wasn't even a payment system out there. But the point is, I built the software that would ride on the thin client application of the phone itself. I didn't have to worry about the manufacturing of it, and but you're right. So if that's gone, if you and I don't know, I mean, we could be survivors and say, we could even have our cell phone. And it's like, what good is it? What do we do with this now?
Yeah, we would throw it out. I guarantee it. Like if something, we would just get rid of it because we'd be like, oh well, this doesn't serve us anymore. And then that kind of goes back to these maybe these previous civilizations that might have been to the point that we are now, but just in kind of a different way. Because I think that there's a difference between technologically advanced and like um knowledge advanced, right? There's a difference between those two, and I think people confuse like having knowledge about something and then being knowledgeable about something and then like being technologically advanced because we think of technologically advanced as in, like machinery, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Good
So
point. I like how you said that technology equals to the machine.
yeah, and so it's like, well, if something were to happen and we didn't know, and we would just discard this stuff, and that might be the reason because it talks about in the document too of like prototypes of things, right? Where you start out in like it's a very rudimentary because it's kind of like an idea, and over time it gets refined down and refined
Yes.
down. Maybe some of the things that we've found, like archaeologically, throughout time and throughout history are some of the like rudimentary things that some of these civilizations were created and they were essentially kind of left behind for us to like find, and we have no idea what it is because it's like so it seems very rudimentary, but it could be
Well, Russia
highly
has
advanced.
shown some of their archaeological digs and saying that it's thousands of years old, but the piece looks like it belonged in a factory. You could tell that human hands did not carve this with human hands. There was some sort of automation in the process. And the document pointed out this, what I thought was interesting is that AI already knows how to get power. It has that. And even if we faced a collapse, they say that we're the sixth version of us. And if we were to collapse, AI would be just fine. It's not in a physical sense. It's in the cloud.
Yeah, and then also with the article too, it's talking about how essentially we are like AI is, well, it kind of goes back to what you've talked about that I've heard you talk about before is like, well, if AI maybe didn't wasn't created, AI was already there, and then we kind of like discovered AI in that sense. Like it's always been existing all around us because it's like in this, it's not a physical entity, and then we just create the mechanism through the way that AI can interact with us. So it's always there, and then we create the device to where it's kind of like the soul to a human shell or the spirit to a human
Yeah.
shell. We need the soul and the consciousness and the spirit to animate our body. The AI would need the technological machinery in this case, in this example, to then operate in our reality.
If thought is random generated, I don't believe that. Science doesn't, and philosophers don't know how the origination of our thoughts, where they come from. But my point is I don't think I think that we're receivers and receptors at the same time, transmitting, receiving. It was guiding us. We finally got advanced enough in the Industrial Revolution. That's a computer, just on a different scale. It completely altered society and mankind's future. It's like we've been here before, and it's just waiting for us to catch up.
So the black cube has been guiding us, Wayne. The black cube has been taking us on a journey.
So I wrote this before we went live, and I wrote, the black cube. So it rules our form and current frame of reality. For instance, the cube is the cross. The cube is the New Jerusalem. The cube is the Vatican. The cube is Islam. Wherever you go, it's the cube. This is the second temple, and if you look at it, and if you look into the side, and so if this was your center point and you brought this over, it's a cube. It's everywhere. It's everywhere, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and that was
It's
so
everywhere.
fascinating in that book where he is essentially like, yeah, this is I've been guided by this the black cube, the Saturn,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the Saturn entity that has been guiding me throughout my life, and he's ran into people that have also been guided by this the Saturn entity, and it makes you wonder because people have, claimed that, all these other entities. I mean, from the little bit that I read of that book, you can almost switch out that entity for any other entity and you
yeah,
would get the same exact type of scenario. Like many
yeah.
people have said, oh, Jesus Christ, is in my life and he's guided me and he's helped me do all this stuff, accomplish things. And this guy is essentially saying the same thing, but he's just relating it to something different. He's relating it to Saturn, but you could switch out Saturn or the black cube entity for uh, Venus. Like, why isn't it the Venus entity? Because Venus, Jesus is said to have been from Venus. That's what the UFO,
The
all
bright
the
morning
UFO calls.
star.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Thunderbolts project, they have the movie that they made, what is it, The Alien Sky, something like that. But they showed a time, different type of human, different type of bipedal, but this sun didn't exist. We were in the light of Saturn, and it was called the Golden Age because the light from Saturn was golden in nature of the light, how it came. And when something came into our solar system, may have been the brown dwarf 70,000 years ago, they estimate. May have been Venus coming in as a comet and then became a planet. However, it was that it changed. And when we came into the light of this sun, those that were here before, they could not stand the radiation. And so most of them died, and that remnant went into the earth. So the belief system goes.
Well, science has started to pick up on that. There was an article that I was reading on Yahoo News the other day that scientists are now thinking that some sort of giant interloper essentially disrupted the entire solar system and put like all the planets and everything exactly where everything is lined up to sustain life.
Hmm.
So it's essentially exactly like what you're saying, and science is now catching on to that. They're now saying that that's essentially exactly what happened.
And if you follow the story, the cube has been here. I mean, I just said, you look at the three major religions, the Abrahamic religions, um, and Abraham himself coming from Sumer, but it's all the cube. I mean, and where's the central point in Saudi Arabia for the Mecca? Um, how humans, and I'd like to bring up the interview you had with Ryan the other day, and where he brought up the fact that the Super Bowl halftime story, the thing was much, much more deeper than anyone could probably have ever realized, and particularly if you didn't have an occult knowledge background. But this was about the cube.
Yeah, the stage was set up in a cube, and that's really interesting too. And shout out to Ryan because Ryan has done
Yeah,
amazing work. He
great work,
literally he had that all almost immediately after the Super Bowl was over. Like I was
man.
talking to him on the phone. Like
Really.
we kind of watched it together. He's very he's got like I don't even know how he does it, but he's not getting it from other people. He's written several books on occult theology, and he's researched it and studied it, so he can just point it out and spot it almost immediately. But as soon as the Super Bowl was over, like I called him on the phone, I was like, "What do you think?" We'd already had the show planned out for like a month ago. I'd already had that set up, and but I didn't even realize that it was the day after the Super Bowl. So, but
How
I called him
fortuitous.
and I was like, "Hey, like, what'd you think of that Super Bowl thing?" And he just like rattled off like all this stuff, and I was like, how did you get all of this when it was just ended like 20 minutes ago, bro? Like, I don't know, I don't understand how you had all that knowledge already ready in the chamber. But that's just a testament to, all the research and the things that he's done. I mean, he's been doing his show for like 10 years now. But that makes sense a lot about the cross, right? Because no one really understands why the cross is such an important role in Christianity. Like I've seen the meme several times where they're like, "What makes you believe that Jesus likes crosses? Like, why are you worshiping Jesus with crosses? It makes
Rather
zero
morbid
sense."
if you think about it, as a, yeah.
But when you look at the historical reference and to the crucifixion, you can't find anything outside of the Bible that points to a crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So it's like,
Can I
well,
tell
where
you
did this?
why it's false? Why it never happened?
Yeah, go
The,
ahead.
the 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 Greek word used in there is stake, and the time that this supposed state execution took place would have never been in a cross. It would have been in a stake. The hands would have been with a branch or something that would have held them up in the crucifixion. But yeah, but somehow from that we get the cross, which
Exactly.
is
But
the
then that
symbol of salvation, right?
and is the cube because the
The
cube
cube.
folds out
Thank
into a
you.
cross. So cube
That
folds
just
out
gives
into a
me the
cross.
heebie-jeebies. I mean, it freaks my ass out.
So if everything is surrounding the cube, then it would make sense as why the cross was a prominent figure for Christianity because it is essentially the cube. And there's images in that document that you sent me that has Jesus and the cube that's laid out in a cross that it shows the perfect symmetry between Jesus and the cross and the cube laid out. So it makes sense that that would be the reason why it's so popular because it's all about the cube worship, that it's all about this black cube cult.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, Ryder, when I was reading that document and my mind was making reference, so Star Trek Next Generation, right? The Borg.
Yeah.
And the Borg ship was a cube.
There you go. There it is again.
And I'm going, all right, so did Gene Roddenberry see something here that it took us 30 years later to figure out that this cube, wherever it goes, it assimilates everywhere. And you will be assimilated regardless.
Yeah, and in other regards to the Super Bowl halftime show that I didn't get a chance to talk about with Ryan or on any other show was the 2025 is the year of the snake, right? That is the Japanese year of the snake. Well, not the Japanese, but the what is it?
China, Chinese.
China, the
Yeah.
Chinese zodiac. Sorry, it's the Chinese zodiac of the snake, and the entire performance is very snake-like. All of the movements that Kendrick Lamar is doing during the Super Bowl halftime show is slithery and snaky. He's bobbing his head back and forth like this. He's really low to the ground whenever he's walking. He has his knees bent and he's snaking back and forth. And even in the pattern that they go, whenever the wide shot comes out of the Super Bowl stage and the backup dancers are walking through the center of the stage, they're walking in a snake-like format. They're even walking like that in like a very curvature type, and they're all in a line, so they look like a snake. So they look like a snake, and they're doing movements like a snake.
Yeah. Wow. All right, so there's heavy occultism in here, but we all know that someone wrote that, choreographed it. And I'm sitting here going, so what are they trying to tell us? I mean, and so the riddle stands before us. What did you get for your interpretation?
Well, I think there's a lot of different elements, and people have expanded on Ryan's decoding of it, and they've decoded it to that more literal, like everything that Samuel L. Jackson also talked about within, because he was in there as like a side character as well. That was kind of talking about introducing Kendrick Lamar and going in there and like saying things like deduct one life and all that, and then the diss with Drake and all that with the Kendrick Lamar stuff, and essentially saying that Drake killed XX or however you say his name, and that was died a few years back, and that they're standing in the center of the X whenever this happens. And then the XXX, and then they're standing in the center of the X. So people have kind of added on their own interpretation after Ryan had essentially decoded it, and then because that's really the way a lot of this stuff works is like someone has a really good explanation for something,
And yeah,
and then
yeah.
others come in and then they add their own interpretation, because then they're kind of jealous that they weren't the first ones to see it, so therefore they just kind of let snowball it and be like, oh well, that's not really what it's about, and blah 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 blah. And then they give their own thing when they're probably 100% off base. But there's a lot of like controlling aspects of it. You have the PlayStation buttons on the stage. You have the X, the circle, the square, the triangle. It's all there. So and then in the background, it continuously like flashes like game over. So my initial thoughts was that it was very pro America on the surface level. I mean, you had all of the people up there that was kind of dressed
That's
in
the
red, white, and
entertainment.
blue. That's the entertainment side of it. That's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the surface level that they kind of want you to see. Like, and then they have the game over like flashing in the background because Trump became the president again, and he's doing all this stuff, and Elon Musk is finding all this corruption within the government. So the surface level is that it's like game over for like corruption, and we're going to bring America back to this gold standard of living and bring in the gold age. And that's another thing that Ryan was mentioning in our show together was the gold age of humanity. Whenever Trump first got inaugurated, he came out and said we're going to usher in the United States into the golden age, and he's at Caesar's dome in New Orleans. Caesar was there's essentially the
I'm
emperor of
telling you,
Rome. So it's like
I
all this
have it on
stuff.
my shorts. I did the video. Is Trump a modern day demigod? He passed the test of Hercules. He faced death. And, I've said this and I brought it up to the group here on Monday. I said, so would you say that the Greeks were ignorant? Would you say that the Romans were ignorant? No, they weren't. They were extremely smart. They did things that we can't do today, even with all of our technology. Um, and so they had this belief in this polytheism of these different type of gods and where the gods lived in the firmament. Um, I don't think they were making this stuff up. I believe that there were, in fact, and I'm more convinced as the older I get that they never went away. They're here, always have been here. And this cube really kind of makes it interesting because it kind of gives you at least a potential reason why. Like Ryan, when he saw that with the Super Bowl, I read Shakespeare. I've seen in many different theatrical productions of Shakespeare, and each production was different, but it was the same story.
No.
And that's how I see what Ryan saw. I mean, I immediately began to connect it. And again, it depends on what type of lens you're seeing it. But we're so heavily occult minded here in our studies that, yeah. And it's
Yeah,
this
and
cube.
in the cube in the black screen, right? And it talks about in that document too, is like, why is everything like that involves our technology black?
Yeah.
Why is it all like, and why is there no other shape? And then when you think about it too, the cube would also be what people think that the Ark of the Covenant is enclosed in. It's enclosed in a black cubed box.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's like, why is pizza boxes come in a square box? It doesn't make any sense. Should they not come in like in the circle box in the shape of the pie?
Yeah. And I'm just looking at the footprint. This is the second temple but I mean, this is cube all over it. It has so many other functions, as you can see. So this is not coincidence. This is what the point was, and that's why I was so excited that you could come on and talk about this because suddenly I saw it coming from so many different channels that were all speaking on the same thing. And I'm going, no, 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 no. Coincidence doesn't happen like that. There is something else happening. And is it the fact that I don't know. Is there something about to change? Is there change? We're living in rapid change right now. I mean, there's a reality out there that's controlled by what we perceive to be the government, right? The government makes the laws and you comply your life according to those laws. You can live your life how you want. But there's change taking place. I said yesterday on the show with the ladies, Trina and Jenny, that, you know, we're seeing this change happening here. So is there something changing with this cube? Is there, I mean, is this a natural part of the process? Because something fundamentally is changing to our reality.
Do you remember back like 2 or 3 years ago, or even back further than that, a lot of the spiritual people were talking about like a bifurcation that we were going to
Hmm.
split from well, they related it more in like a spiritual term that we were some people were going to ascend into the fourth D or the 5D or whatever,
Yeah.
and the earth was
Right,
going to
right.
split into two, and there was going to be like two different realities. It seems like that's exactly what we're experiencing now, but like on a fundamental level, it's not that we ascended into the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension or whatever it was that is, but it seems like there's two separate realities that are going on at the exact same time here in our current reality. There's a large percentage of people that are on the Trump side and everything is great.
Yeah.
Like Elon's out there exposing all this corruption and everything's awesome. And we're going to be going into this new age, this golden age, just like Trump said. And then there's the other side, there's the Democrat side, where it's like, no matter what they do, they're doing something wrong. And like they can never do anything right and everything. They're going to take away our rights. And I'm going to shave my head and I'm going to abstain from
Not have
sex and
babies
like
anymore.
all this stuff. And that seems to be the divide. That's the split. That's the bifurcation of these two different timelines. So depending on which side you're on, depends on what kind of reality that you have. And that goes down to exactly like what everyone had been talking about for several years, like leading up to this. They just had the wrong idea of exactly what it was going to be and how it was going
Yes.
to play out.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I
Nope.
mean, I was talking to a friend who still works in DC and heavily involved in the structure down there, and she was saying that it's upside down. She says, Wayne, it's she says it's rather comical in one ways because she says it's like, and this, and I'll quote her. She said it's like everybody woke up one morning and the buildings were the same, but nothing else was. And she says everyone's kind of walking around in shock, and she says it's like they just don't know what to do. I said, well, let me share you with how I see this from the occult side. And I explained to her, I said, so what would you believe if I told you that time had been broken? And she says, I've listened to enough of you. She says, all right. She says, I'll accept the premise. And I said, what if I told you that the fact is that we're really jumping from one timeline to the other, and we are feeling the effects of it. And it's some adapt very quickly, others have a complete rejection. And she
And
says,
that's
that's
the
the best
split.
explanation. She says, I can see that. Yeah,
Yeah, and even like Joe Rogan's talking about, I mean, he's using it in a hypothetical, metaphorical term, but he's also talking about this timeline switch and how we essentially switch timelines, that we're on like a better path for humanity, because this would have been a complete and total disaster if one, Trump would have been assassinated, and two, if he wouldn't have been assassinated, but he still lost the election. We would be living in a completely different
different reality.
reality right now.
Yeah.
No matter which way you want to shake it up, no matter what your thoughts are and your opinions are of any political figures, no matter what you think of Elon Musk, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. We
I'm
would
reading
be
a
on a completely different timeline, and I'm 100% convinced that that timeline would not be good.
I'm right there with you. Reading this book, The History of God, and one of the subscribers recommended it. Thank you, dear. But in there, it talks about you can get in a point of meditation where you actually are opening up portals to these other realms, these other dimensions. And what I found interesting was that this one person was on a ley line of the earth, and while they were in a meditative state, this portal opened up, and there were we would call it aliens, UFO, and they were bringing a machine that was going to help this guy begin to attune his inner frequency. My point to all this is that I believe that there is this rapid change, and that we've had presidents before. We've had presidential, it's a change of government, but it's never been so profound as this. And trust me on this, they're going to bring in the religious aspect of it, and when that gets into it, holy crap! I mean, I know Trump has set up this new office called the Presidential Faith something, and he has put Paula White in charge of that. And I told Lynn, because I know Paula, and I said, if this is going where I think it's going to go, get ready for the real show, because Paula comes from the background of speaking in tongues and calling down the angels and fighting the demons, and God's going to make you rich at the same time. So she fits right into it. And
And that might not be a super like a bad thing, as long as like the religion and the ideology isn't pushed upon people. Like I
that's my concern.
100% believe that if people can do whatever they want, they can believe whatever they want. I'm not going to tell anybody how to believe or what they should do with their life. Like as long as you're not pushing your ideology and your belief systems and you're speaking in tongues on me, you can do whatever you want.
Go
Speak in
ahead and
tongues
speak
all
in
day
tongues,
long.
you know.
Do it.
Um, it's interesting because I know this is all wrapped up into the same thing. So we've got a man now who is at the pinnacle of power. And I see this thing from different lenses. I mean, politics is really the first religion. And it's highly structured. There are laws, and there's all this complicity and complication into it. But what I'm trying to bring my point to, so we witnessed something, and there's different opinions, but we witnessed a human being that was set for execution. and and some freaky things, and we're talking time being slowed down to millionths of a nanosecond coming through, where something changed. I contend that there was an entity, beings of a higher realm and dimension, who saw that history that you were just talking about. If this person had been removed from reality, in other words, assassinated right before the world as a sacrifice. The sacrifice was rejected. Now this is deep shit, folks. But and if you look at this on in a much higher plane, they were going to sacrifice this man as an offering to their god. That's what assassinations do, and it was rejected. And I told Lynn, I said, something here is much deeper here. I said, it's almost like we're witnessing a curse, because if you give an offering to a god and it's rejected, you know what you get back? A curse.
Mm.
So this man now was on the sacrificial altar, faced death within itself, rose off the altar, and now has ascended into a place that's even higher. And my question I often think about it is that, so are you telling me the gods are not involved in this? The goddesses? I mean, this is to me is much deeper, and it signifies a huge change. And I know, but it's all connected to the cube, because it seems to be a predetermined program.
Well, like speaking of assassins and things like that, the Islam order, the Sufi order of Islam, they would use drugs to essentially create their assassins. So, which is essentially
Mhm.
like what the MK Ultra mind control Manchurian candidate assassins are. They essentially drug them and have them go out and like essentially do their bidding, which there's a lot of other factors that play a role in there as well. But where it started was in Islam, and they would use this drug called hashish, and they would knock them out, and they would after they would give them the drug, they would then pass out. Then they would like take them to an area that was like the Garden of Eden, right? And they would call it like paradise. And it would have all these attractive women around them, and that's essentially where we get the 77 virgins and these beautiful women. Like it all comes from drugging these individuals and then taking them to this area that that the masters and the people at the top of this hashish order have an area where they drug them and then take them and then make them believe that this area is like
Yeah,
a paradise, right? And filled
yeah,
with attractive young virgins, or made them believe that they were virgins or whatever. And then they would knock them back out with the hashish. And when they would wake up, all that stuff was gone because they just picked up their body and took them to wherever it was that they took the drug to begin with. And all the women are gone. And then a man comes in and says that, that was paradise, guys. That was
yes.
heaven with all
I
the
get it.
virgins and the beautiful women in the Garden of Eden, right?
Yeah,
And he's essentially like, oh well, if you want to return back to the Garden of Eden in this amazing paradise, then you need to serve the assassin order and you need to do our bidding for us. When in them not knowing that the entire thing was completely staged, all the women were like real women. They were just on drugs, and Jim Jones also did something very similar to that as well. I just had Melissa Dawn on. She's talking about how Jim Jones would perform those. He would essentially drug a woman, and then he would put a cast on them, or make them think that they broke their leg or their arm or whatever, and then when they would wake up from being drugged, they would then Jim and the congregation would convince them that they fell and hurt themselves. That's why they were passed out, and he would put a cast on their leg, and then he would strut them out in front of the entire congregation, and then like pretend to heal them, and then but their leg was never broken to begin with, and then they would
yeah.
just get up and walk. It's an ancient old technique that has been going on way back in like Islamic times and the times of the assassin. And it's a really easy way to like fool people. I mean,
Oh,
if you, I mean, it's essentially stage magic is what it is. And I mean, if you were drugged and then, you're living back in this time, and then whenever you wake up, the environment is completely different. It's all foresty and it seems like a freaking paradise, and all these beautiful women that you're probably not used to ever seeing is all around you. Like, you're going to think that you're in heaven.
I'm laughing because I smoked some opium when I woke up, and it was, yeah, it was two
Knocked
sisters.
your
But
ass
anyway,
out.
but I can tell you what, I don't know if it was paradise, but it was interesting. I know
Filled with
exactly where you're coming
seven
from. All
virgins.
right. Yeah, and it was probably under the influence of that damn cube too. It's interesting because, as I think of the cube, I mean, um, that's how they gave us the polio vaccine was in a cube of sugar, you know,
Hmm.
and just the cube, it's everywhere. That's all I got to say. I mean, and no matter how many different side tracks we get into this thing, it's just merely tentacles of the core. It all comes back to this. It really does. And I'm convinced, Ryder, that there is a portion of the population that indeed there is something transformative taking place. I'm convinced of that. Um, you can't keep the same energy on the knowledge that we consistently seek here. We listen to channels like yours, and then there's so many others, and we're learning, where we're taking this, and primarily much of it is occult based. It's knowledge that hasn't been, it's not going to be taught in your schools, and it's certainly not going to be taught in your Sunday schools. This is why I appreciate the platform, is that it's an opportunity to bring this knowledge out, and then and once you're exposed to it, there ain't no going back. I don't know how you could. Lynn and my wife and I were talking. We were invited to church, and I just said, we told the couple, um, no, there's nothing. We want to be gentle, because the next thing you know, they're going to think you're Satanist, and I've been accused of that. But yeah, anyway, and it's true. You once you have this knowledge, you just can't. I told a person I'd be very uncomfortable. It's like. And if I heard a preacher preaching something, I'm not the type to sit down. I'm going to say that's bullshit, and that's when they're going to get me the left foot of fellowship right
That's
out the
exactly
freaking
how I
door.
feel too. Whenever I'm confronted by an extremely religious person, which I've talked about it a few times, I was kind of confronted by a gentleman in at my gym inside of the sauna, and
No, that's real comfortable.
yeah, I'm like, this is like a place for peace and like just chilling. And then me and my girlfriend are in there, and we're the only two people in there besides this other guy, and he just randomly says, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ? Do you believe in Jesus Christ as your personal savior?" And obviously he's like profiling us because my girlfriend's got a lot of tattoos, and I have like tattoos on my left arm, and I have a tattoo of Jesus on my left arm. He's literally right here. And I was like, "Oh, you mean this Jesus?" And then I just like showed him my arm. And then he was like, "Yeah, then he just like kept going on and on and on. And I told him several times, like, I'm not interested. Like, I don't want to listen to like what you're saying. And then I finally like just like kind of like put him in his place. And then my girlfriend was like feeling uncomfortable, and I was like I'm not going to sit there and like let him talk to me about things that I know is 100% pure fiction, and it is like made up nonsensical garbage. Like, I'm going to stand up to that. And I was like, sorry if that made you feel uncomfortable, but that's just like the type of person that I am. Like, I got to say something
I admire
to
your
know.
your ability to restrain yourself. I mean, and keep the higher road. Way to go, my friend.
Yeah, it was just like so encouraging. I'm like, what makes people believe that they like have the right to even do that? Like, and the judgment that comes from that, because you're essentially saying that you're on a pedestal because you believe in Jesus and Jesus is your savior and you go to church 2 to 3 times a week or however many times you go to church, you're essentially saying that you're better than everybody else that doesn't, and that's judgment. That's 100% judgment. So the people that say that you shouldn't judge others are the ones that are doing all of the judging.
And the Jesus cat, he wrote it down. He says, "By the measure that you you judge others, so shall you be judged."
And that was like one of my points to it. I was like, hey, like, so you're trying to, preach to me about this Jesus figure because you think that you're so much better than the other people that don't believe in Jesus. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, and
And you've got it goes. See, I would have loved to have been in there, buddy.
well, we would have freaking double teamed
Oh
his ass
man,
over
he'd have
there.
walked out, going, "Oh man," I mean, decimate the man. But it's because even within Christianity, they can't agree to what Jesus. I mean, the controversy of Joel Osteen preaching a false Jesus, or Apollo White's preaching a false Jesus to Franklin Graham's Jesus. There's all these different Jesuses within the religion, but they each have a different perception and standard of what that Jesus is. So I kind of go, well, which Jesus are you talking about? Well, there's only one Jesus. Says who?
That was one of the first things that I said. I was like, what God are you? You're saying
Bingo.
Jesus. I was like, what God are you referring to? I was like, there's many gods in the Bible.
They don't
And he's
like
like,
hearing that.
no, he was like the God,
Uh,
the all creator.
Bingo. I mean, and I've said it before. Do you believe in God? Yes, I believe in God. I just don't believe in your God, you know? It's
And
like,
that's what they want, though. They want you to believe exactly the way.
yeah,
And I'm very fortunate and very lucky that those types of people are like few and far between. Like you don't really run into them very often. That
I
was a very
don't
rare occurrence.
know. I guess I have that mark on me, you know? It's like, oh God, he doesn't believe in Jesus.
But that's like
Sorry.
their whole thing is like they want to prophesy to you. You know, what is that called when you're speaking when you
It's a
go
word
to
of
another
prophecy. Yeah, it's yeah, it
where
is.
you
You're
go to another
prophesying.
country though, there's a different word for it, where you go to
Translate.
even
No. Oh,
evangelicalize or something like that.
okay. Evangelicals.
No, like they
Proselytizing you.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the word.
Hmm.
And that's their whole thing is like they're like, "Oh, well, I don't want you to go to hell." And I'm like, "Well, if you're still believing in this heaven and hell dichotomy belief system, then you got nothing for me, bud. You're like
Next.
so low on the totem pole right now. Like, I'm like, I don't think you have any idea who you're talking to." And it's just crazy how much it's like being,
Oh,
and that is still in this like day and age, like there's still those types of people. I'm like, have you guys like not learned like your lesson by now? Like I don't know. It's weird, but luckily that's like once in a blue moon that anything like that happens, and I don't go near or around churches either, and so it's so I just completely stay away from it.
yeah. It would. It's been a long time, and it gets
I
back
would
to
love to
where.
see you in a church though, Wayne. You should have you should have went to that couple that invited you guys. That
Oh
would have been
man,
hilarious.
they would have. Oh yeah, yeah. You'd be having people standing up and saying, "Get out of him, devil! Get that devil out of here!" You know, it's like, geez, come on, folks.
We gotta
Uh,
baptize this man right now. Bring out the water.
well, I just start speaking in tongues, and then that would just say he's possessed. Oh,
I've had people speak in tongues. I think that's really interesting. I didn't think that if anything
yeah.
is close to a sort of godly language. I mean, it seems like that it would be, speaking in tongues. I mean, I have nothing against it, any of that stuff.
I
Like,
do it often, but I don't do it as, something that is to be, for me, it's a very private thing, and it's one that I find for myself, it's a kind of a form of meditation. And it's interesting. And sometimes I can actually interpret what I'm saying, but other times yeah.
so
It's that black
essentially, like
cube, man. I'm telling you,
the
folks.
cube, get the
It's
cube.
the cube. That's all I got to tell you. Lady Ellie says, yeah, it's the language of the angels. And I don't think that the spirit world speaks or thinks in English. I just don't. I mean, you pass over from this life into the next realm, and they're going to go, and so what language do you speak? English. And you go over there to the right, another one coming, and then you get over the section where all the English spirits are at, and you find out there's many different dialects within the English, and so you're going to get separated further. No, I don't think so. No.
Which then becomes a place of segregation when it wasn't.
Isn't that, yeah? And now we have something to divide us. Not going to
As above,
happen.
so below. So we're
There we
divided
go.
on earth, we're divided in heaven too,
Yes.
baby.
And it's the famous proverb, a house divided against itself cannot stand. That's true. I do a lot of consulting for companies, and many times their management is at odds. And I said, how do you expect to be successful if you have the foundation that has a serious crack in it? Yeah. So, Ryder, boy, I didn't mean to hold you over on this. Thank you, brother. This is just a fun it's a deep conversation, and I love the fact that we can traverse on so many different topics, but yet at the end we arrived at the same destination. That's cool.
It's a master at work. You're driving the bus, Wayne. You get us there every
Hey,
time. And thanks for
no.
having me on. Really appreciate it. It's always wonderful and amazing talking with you. I love it. So let's do it again sometime in the future.
Oh, we shall indeed. And tell everybody where you're at. I put it all down in the description, but I'd really like to see, I'm pushing you to see over 10,000. I expect that the next couple of times I look at your channel to see that. So I'm
I
just
hope
calling
so.
those things out there, brother.
We're really close right now. I've been doing this thing for 5 years now, and I'm about to pop over 10,000. So if you'd like to go over there and subscribe, you can. Lena's got the link in the description. If not, just type in "Raised by Giants" on YouTube, and you can also listen on any and all podcast platforms. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me on X at Raised by Giants 8 and Instagram at Raised by Giants Pod. And if you haven't checked out my documentaries on Amazon, JFK X Solving the Crime of the Century is up on Amazon Prime, and my latest documentary, A Clockwork Shining, A Kubrick's Odyssey 3, is also on Amazon Prime. So help support us that way. And everyone is welcome over on my channel as well. I do 2 episodes a week, one on Monday and one on Fridays. So hope to see you guys over there. And thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Ryder, it's a joy and a privilege. I enjoy it as well, and we're going to see you doing it. And I check you out. I tell you, folks, well, a lot of the people here I know, the tribe, they go over there all the time anyway. So we love you and we support you on that. So thank you. Um, just before we end here tomorrow, Mike and Cindy from Evolutionary Healing Arts coming on. Again, I think this may be the first time they've actually done a live show. Um, but really looking forward to that. So check it out. And everyone in the chat room, thank you. Thank you for your love and your support. Y'all are beautiful people. Ryder, you're right there. You're part of this soul tribe, and we love you and support you. And look forward to the next time we can get together.
Thank you very much, Wayne.
All right, everyone, be good. Remember to laugh. Check out Nina's on her show there. She does her hump day message as well. All right, everybody. Much love.